here on Time Well Meant. You might not be familiar. I don't know. Are you a listener?
We get it in the crossing, surprisingly. I don't know how.
Really?
It's we got
It's probably Amazon Podcasts.
I don't know how. They broadcast it somehow, but yeah, we get it. I've heard at least I've heard like one episode, not for me.
Fair. That's a fair point. Hello, and welcome to episode 25 of Time Well Meant, the number one show on my hard drive. If you are new to the show or joining us for the first time, we like to talk about a couple of different topics here on Time Well Meant. We like to discuss gaming, the current online happenings of the world, but most importantly, we do like to discuss mental health and how that affects each and every one of us. Now, today's episode is one of our special deep dive episodes, and I have a very special treat for you today. Now, if you're watching on YouTube and you're looking at the video, it might look as though my normal co-host Silas is patiently waiting for me to give him an intro and then he'll start gabbing. But that's not the case. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Addie Windward, who is Silas's Red Dead Redemption 2 role-playing character. Silas has spent many hours, days, and nights, a chunk of his life really, streaming on Twitch, streaming as Addie on Twitch, kind of just embodying the life of this cowboy. So we thought it would be fun. I'm going to give you a little interview, and we'll see what Addie is all about. So with that being said, Addie Windward, how are you doing?
Howdy there. How you doing today, man, Kirby?
Damn, I'm doing good. I'm so happy to have you here, man. I'm glad you were able to figure out Discord and get on here with me. I didn't know if that might be a bit of a struggle for you.
I tell you what, this new age is a lot of technology. I mean, I was struggling with telegrams, and now you got telephones and telenet or whatever the hell they're calling it. They got
Instagram.
These and the grams and the twits and the whatever the hell it is.
I know, man. Technology's just moving too fast for us all. So, I mean, just to kick this off, I would love to just get a little backstory. Tell us just about yourself, man. What do we need to know?
Well, where do I start? I was born and now I'm here. There you go, end of story. No, I'm just playing.
That's not going to fill an hour, Addie. Come on.
I tell you, all right, you're right. I could probably yap for a little bit. I was born in Tumbleweed. As a little town and out yonder in the desert. I got a brother, a fella by the name of Hef. He's a real son of a bitch. I could probably talk a lot about him, but maybe that's for another time. And, I lived there in Tumbleweed most of my life. I ended up getting a job there with a not-so-nice fella, and, well, he got me doing some not-so-nice work. I won't go into specifics as for the legality of it, but I did some not-so-nice things for not so many years, or probably too many years, honestly. But, something I can relate to you with is a little something that softened me up, changed me quite a bit, was fatherhood. I had my son, and I didn't feel right following that same sort of lifestyle, and so I changed my ways a bit. We left that life behind, and I decided it was time to look for something else. I ended up in New York with a really good close friend of mine, lived there for a while as a odd little family unit till my son got a little older, was able to go out on his own, and I decided to come back home to this odd little place that folks started calling the Crossing. And most people might know it as this or that. People keep telling me it's from some video game called was it Red Damnation or something or another. And no, I lived there for I've been back now for going on about 4 or 5 years now. It's been a long time, I tell you what.
And what have you been up to since you've been back?
Well, shit, when I first got back, it was more about figuring things out. You leave a place for long enough. I was gone for several years. You leave and you come back, and all of a sudden things have changed. Folks have changed, and I didn't go back home immediately. I didn't go back to Tumbleweed when I first got back to the Crossing. I I was there in Strawberry. I don't know if you heard that little town. It's nice, tucked away in the woods. And, oh, it was pretty up there. It was cold. It was cold, but it was pretty up there. And, when I first got in, I started meeting all these odd folk. One after another. I don't know. And, sure enough, after a while, I ended up finding some more odd folk. And even more. And eventually, I ended up finding some good folk. Those good folk ended up being, good friends of mine, parts of my family, things like that. So, and since then, I've been just, I did a bit of working. Just because I'm up in years don't mean I can't work. I figure I'll probably do that till I die or can't do it no more. I was working as a bartender for quite a while and served bar for many a year. And then I switched it around. I was a bit of a information broker for a while. Folks needed to know things. They'd come find old Addie Windward, and I'd tell them what they need to know. And then after a while, I finally decided, well, maybe I want to take a little break. My family and I, we got a ranch out in between Tumbleweed and Armadillo out there, and I settled there for a while. I've been there ever since. Just and nowadays, I take my time, roam the desert, do a bit of people watching, and just still a part of the cross. I don't think I'll ever leave.
Sound like you might be a bit of a magnet for unique characters.
That's right. That's right. I've met a couple of oddballs. That company, or I didn't even mention it. I apologize. I worked for a company when I bartended called Silver Shadow. It's a woman by the name of V. Never knew the rest of her name. For the entirety of the time that I knew her name was V. I thought, all right, that's fine by me. And she ended up marrying a really good friend of mine by the name of Deacon Ewan Byrne. And that fella, a lot of my family ends up being found family. It's not, I got very few blood relatives left, but I have a lot of found family. And so Deacon definitely became a brother of mine and a man I highly respect. And V became sort of this almost mentor figure. He helped me reconnect to the cross and connect to folk. Standing behind a bar is an odd thing. I don't know if you've ever done it. It's just an odd thing. A lot of people talk and they don't realize you're there, so they end up saying shit you wouldn't think to. They talk about robbing banks or fucking whatever else they're doing, and I'm just sitting there. Well, all right, I guess I know this now. Pretty soon, you know enough that people come to you for that sort of information. But anyways, I met a couple of odd people for sure. I'm trying to think. I mean, gangs and all sorts of folk just come in and out. When you're behind, you'd be surprised just standing still all day. The types of oddballs and the types of things that happen, folks. I used to bartend in Valentine a lot. And if you don't know how Valentine's laid out, which I don't expect you to, the main bar that's there is just a strip. The whole town's basically just a strip. It's a shit rud. We call it the schmud because it's shit and mud just mixed together. It's a terrible place. I hate Valentine. Fuck Valentine. And across the way from the bar there's a bank right there. So anytime the bank get robbed, we had a front row seat to it. Best entertainment you can get, I tell you what. But yeah, I definitely met some characters, I tell you what.
Okay. Now, how old are you now? You mentioned you were getting up there in age.
For the time, I'm old. I'm in my 50s. That's getting up there, I tell you. I'm a foot and one hand in the grave. That's where I'm at. And folks in my day and age don't live that long. I mean, people are dying. I've buried a lot of friends. I've buried a lot of folk, and to say that I've lived this long and the type of work I've done and the run-ins I've had, with folk. I'm surprised I've made it this far. I probably could have mentioned some of the other oddball characters I met. There's cannibals, a lot of cannibals.
A lot of cannibals.
I don't know why there's so many fucking cannibals in the crossing. We had these folks called the bloodletters when I first got in the crossing my first month back, who claimed to be these sorts of they're basically like vampires, I guess you'd describe them. And funnily enough, they kidnapped me and they tried to drain me dry of my blood. It was awful. I'm a pretty tough fella, and so you got to put on the act. But goddamn, I was scared. It was awful. And no, they took me, drained me of my blood, and kicked the shit out of me, and left me for dead. Luckily, I didn't. I ended up getting my get back, but it took a while. And goodness gracious, there's a lot of good in the crossing. There's also a lot of crazy shit.
Now, how did you escape that situation?
Probably sheer dumb luck. I definitely didn't help my situation at all when they picked me up. But before they had picked me up, I sent them a little telegram. They had heard a really good friend of mine, and funnily enough, I'd sent them a telegram. That telegram said something along the lines of, if I find you, I'm gonna kill you, and the normal thing that you tell folks like that.
Friendly postcards, yeah.
And they just so happened to find me. But it was, it happened a little backwards to what I wanted, because they found me before I found them. So I was like, well, shit. So yeah, I think I was just lucky. From what I understand, from what they tell me, because I passed out, because the fella it was a mother and her son that was running around doing all this. And they went on a spree, for months, harassing folks at the crossing and just doing all sorts of terrible things to folks, torturing and killing. They funnily enough, they kidnapped and tortured my son, and that was awful. Fucking.
Is that what prompted you to send that very friendly letter?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I ended up, having some crass words for him, and I tell you what, I think it might be the years of drinking that might have just dulled my fear, but I kept talking shit the whole time I was there. The son ended up, I had a Navy revolver that I had, and I had just bought it too. It's nice. And he took that gun and put it in my mouth and shot me. And, shit, I don't know. To be completely honest, I just woke up about a day later in the medical tent there in Blackwater, and they said, "Addie, we don't know what happened to you. Do you?" And I said, "Not really." But we were able to piece things together, and no, I ended up tracking them folks down for a while. That no good and I did back in the day ended up coming in handy, in the modern age. And we ended up finding them, and I got my gun back. So there you go.
Okay, I guess we don't need too many details on that.
No, I served a little time for it, but it was well worth it.
Oh, hey, if it was worth it.
That's right. You got to do what's right for your family. I'm sure you'd do the same.
Oh yeah. Now, was there any lasting repercussions from having your head blown off?
Well, I can't eat normal foods. I usually have to eat like soups and stews and things like that. I don't. Funnily enough, before they did shoot me, I used to talk a little better. Funnily enough, I had more mobility in my jaw. It ain't the same no more though. It's something about that just kind of fucks you up. Get shot in the mouth.
I can really only imagine what that'll do to you.
So can I.
All right,
so
we're
can
gonna
I.
just keep sliding along here. I wanted to ask you, Number one, actually, this was not on my list. What is the secret to living so long as you have in the violent world that you have been in?
That's a good question there. I think it comes, and I've tried to tell people this. I've tried to teach people this over time, and the younger folks in the crossing, they don't. It's a harder lesson for them to learn. Now, a big part of how I made it this far is the fact that I was able to, one, be meaner than most mean sons of bitches I run into in my youth. And then as I got older, I realized that, you go looking for trouble, it's going to find you. So a big part of what I did is just stop looking for trouble. Age calms you down quite a bit. I think, everybody can attest to that as they get older. That's what you'd hope, at least. You don't want to be wild and, 50, 60 years old. Do that fast way to the grave. You got to slow down eventually. And there's a certain mentality that a lot of folks still have to this day in the crossing where, there's the moment a drop of blood is spilled, now you got to go looking for yours, right? And you got to fill your cup up. But, if you just learn a little bit of forgiveness and learn to be the better man, and I'm guilty of not doing that all the time.
I was thinking about the story you literally just told, but go on.
As clearly demonstrated. But that, after that happened and my son passed away, and, it was one of them things that you can't go looking for trouble the whole time. I ended up, I gave my company to, it was called Silver Shadow. That was the company that I worked for when I worked for V and Deacon. They ended up leaving. They left the crossing. They got married and had themselves a couple kids and moved off to Chicago, I believe. And they decided, they was going to give the company to me, and I ran it for several years and, did what needed to be done with that. Make sure I kept folks employed. And, eventually I got to the point where I said, well, I think I'll pass it on. And so I passed it on to some folks, and it damn near crumbled immediately. And, but that's neither here nor there. It was bound to end one of these days. But, moving on and moving forward, it's just kind of one of those things in life you got to do. You can't just stop. But no, finding a way to take a more peaceful resolution has kept me alive, because I've had plenty of friends, again, I've buried because of the fact they don't want that. They don't want the peaceful resolution. They want to get theirs, and it's just no way to go. You live a short life. I've seen a lot of good folks, a lot of folks that didn't deserve to die and didn't deserve to meet their end far sooner than they needed to. But, the impact that they left on the folks around them always ripples out. You always see it. It's a sad but beautiful thing,
Learning the lessons from the mistakes of people around you.
That's right. That's right.
Wise. Very wise. Very wise.
So folks keep telling me.
All right, just a little lighter here. What's a thing that will never fail to lift your spirits?
Well, as cliche as it might sound, it'd probably be my children. I got a number of family members. I got, I'd say folks like Deacon's definitely a brother of mine, but I got several children, and getting to visit with each one of them, they got, they're all grown, busy lives, but getting to visit with them is always just, it's nice. It's, you can't go wrong. I know you got a child of your own, so I know that he brings a lot of light to your heart. And so it's the same with me. I got, I tell you what, stick with one. You don't need any more. I got a lot of kids, and it's tough, even when they're grown.
That's actually something, one of the rumors in my research. I heard you had a number of children. Do you have a specific number?
Well, let's count them out together. I gotta see if I remember them all. I have one grandchild, and I have 6 kids. Let's see, there's Morgan, They all got kind of odd. A couple of them have kind of odd names. Most of them have all right names, I think. Now I really think about it. There's Morgan, Madison, Oliver, Rabbit, Rose is my son that passed away, and Clementine. And I think that's about it. That's 6. So I got 6 kids and a grandchild by the name of Todd.
I mean, 6 isn't too crazy. It's respectable. You must have been a good-looking man back in the day getting around.
Oh, they're all adopted. Every single one of them.
Oh, okay. So you're a virgin?
No, come on now. I've been around the block a time or two.
Okay. Just want to make sure we cover all the bases. We really want to get to know the man here today, to get to know the man here today. You know what I mean?
That's right.
All right. Okay. So if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
That's good. I like that. I'd probably say, I'd probably tell him to slow down a bit. You know, I lived life and felt too fast. You know, I was always trying to stay busy, always worried about my son. And, you know, even before I had a son, I was even wilder. It's just, you know, you're going, working as much as you can. And, you know, the nights that I can remember, well, they were still pretty crazy. So I'd definitely say slow down a bit, take the time to enjoy it. And a lot of it is dependent on hindsight. You know, I have very fond memories of my grandfather and my mother and, you know, folks in my immediate family. And conversations I wish I would have had with them that I never got to have. You know, I was always too busy with life. I was always too busy doing something else, thinking about my own shit that I didn't ever stop to think, oh goddamn, what's happening with this person? Or I'm lucky I got to learn enough about my family and our history that it allowed me to have an appreciation for it when I was older. But you know, like I said, there's a lot of things I missed out on. A lot of like I said, a lot of conversation I would have liked to have.
Now, do you think there's something to be said about, you're saying you would tell your younger self to slow down, but if you had slowed down while you were younger, would you be the same man that you are today?
Probably not. I think you're right there, but I don't know. It's always that double-edged sword, ain't it? You can't have it both ways. You got to have it one or you got to have it the other. So, yeah, I think slowing down, I think is more for my, is a more selfish thing. You know, I may not have been the same man I am today, and I'm all right with who I am today. I wouldn't say I'm proud of who I am or that I'm, you know, ashamed or nothing. I'm just, you know, everything's fine, but definitely it's something I think about pretty regularly. As I've gotten older, I got more time with myself. That's one of those things that ends up coming to fruition. I think about that a lot more. That, you know, how could I have changed things? But I don't try and dwell on it. That's the thing. You can't dwell on them things. You can think about them plenty, just don't dwell on them.
You got to keep your eyes forward.
That's right.
Okay. All right, man. You had some just wisdom imparted upon us today. I wasn't quite ready for this.
Well,
but kind of continuing on the trend of getting a little more lighthearted with this. You got a favorite horse?
You know what's funny is I specifically remember mentioning this, or someone did, but I don't remember the breed. I do have a favorite of my horses that I own, and it's a horse that was actually, I've mentioned Deacon quite a bit, but it's a horse that when he left, he gave the horse to me. It's a horse by the name of Morning Star. Funnily enough, Deacon was a deacon, and that's why we called him Deacon. And so a man of God riding a horse named Morning Star is a little something funny about that. But he gave me that horse, and it's been a loyal beast as long as I've had it. Definitely a stubborn son of a bitch, and doesn't like me riding her around. But what are you gonna do? So
you have multiple. Then you got a whole
I
you said you had a ranch, right?
Yes, sir.
How many
sir.
horses you got?
I got 4 horses. I got 4. I got a new horse I ain't named yet, but needs a name. Probably figure that out. I got a Wander, who's the horse that I rode around for a long time. My brother named the horse because I said, well, you and that horse are wandering around. And I thought, well, we all wandering, so that's his name. There you go. And so it's a horse I rode for many, many years. He's out to pasture now. He's far too old to ride. I take him around, make sure he gets enough exercise and stays limber. One thing about getting older, you gotta keep moving. You don't want to start staying still. The moment you stop, it's when the moment you start slowing down, it's when you stop. And when you stop, you ain't gonna go again. So, I'm just trying to make sure he stays on my pace, and it's getting slower as the years goes on, but we ain't stopping anytime soon. And I have Matcha, and Matcha is my son Rose's horse. That when Rose passed away, I got Matcha, and he's a big Shire horse and is a real beast to handle and ride around. And you always feel like you're 100 feet tall on that big old horse. But I'd take him out and ride him every now and then, and make sure, again, you got to make sure horses, they stay active, they stay happy. Happy horse will lead you long ways. So.
All right. Okay. You ever kill a man?
Should I plead the fifth? No. Yes, sir. I have many a men, unfortunately.
And was it all deserved?
Deserved is up to interpretation. There's times when I would have called it deserved, but would they? Is something I ask myself nowadays. Again, when I was younger, I did a lot of not so good things, and them not so good things, ended up having repercussions. And in my youth, I thought nothing of it. It's one of those things you just sort of get numb to, I guess. I don't know. But as you get older, you start thinking about it, and you start pondering, and you start changing your perspective. So at the time, no, I thought it was plenty deserved. But as I've gotten older, no, I don't know. I don't know if it is or not.
It's a double-edged sword.
That's right. Would I change it? Maybe. I don't know. But then what would I wouldn't be very useful at my job then if I did. So never know.
You're a really interesting character, Addy.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Okay. All right. I've got one more for you here in this section.
All righty.
You have a favorite food and drink?
Now you're talking. Now, I used to love steak. I used to be able to eat steak all the time, but it ain't as easy nowadays. So nowadays I really like I like canned corned beef. That's probably my go-to for food because it's just easy. I don't like cooking. I don't want to deal with all these fucking ingredients. Give me some fucking canned corned beef and a whiskey, and I'm good to go. Can't go wrong. That's breakfast, lunch, and dinner right there.
That's the Cowboy Lunchable.
That's right. That's right. What the fuck is a Lunchable?
Okay. All right. Now, I've really geared all these questions up to this point, kind of specifically on the character that Silas has created and who Addy is, what he's been through, who he's met, and things of that nature. But I did have a few questions regarding role play, kind of generally, specifically, so to speak. But Addy's going to answer them all.
I suppose I can.
And that's going to be very helpful to all of us. I'm sure of it. So, if one of our listeners wanted to start getting into role play and doing an online role play, through a video game, what would you tell them?
Well, to start with, you got to figure out the type of game that you want to start with. My introduction to it was, I'd played Red Dead Redemption, to online, or I guess Silas did. I've never played the game. Silas had, and he really liked it and thought, oh shit, I'll do this. And you got to find the setting is important. I have a lot of friends of mine that really enjoy the the cyberpunk setting, and they might enjoy the Western setting, or they might want a more modern setting. There's a lot of folks doing the GTA RP. It really comes down to that when you're starting off. Now, in terms of finding a server, you got a lot of options to weigh. Now, there's things called whitelisted servers, and there's things that are just open servers, right? And the open servers are full of crazy people. You don't know. It's if you've ever played like a game of D&D, you're rolling 100 D20 when you're playing that, right? You don't know who you're getting. You have no clue. You're walking in blindfolded and guns all around you. It's just you're throwing your hands to God, all right? But if you want a more curated and a higher standard of role play, which don't get me wrong, I think the open server's always got a place. If you're going to role play, if you're going to start somewhere, start in an open server, because you'll find some gems out there. You'll find some folks that are, some non-whitelisted servers that are all right. You'll run into the occasional shitter, as folks seem to call them. That's one of them new words I learned.
Very good.
Did I use that right? Right?
You did. You nailed it.
Perfect. I practiced that all afternoon, and you'll run into one of them folks, and you're not gonna have a good time. But then you might run into some nice folk, and they'll help you grow. They'll help you develop, and you learn etiquette. You learn how to. There's a lot of etiquette to role play. You got to be able to give as much as you can take. You got to be willing to say, all right, well, if I'm gonna have a scene with somebody, I gotta know if I'm gonna control it or if they're gonna control it. I gotta know if I'm giving role play to them or if they're giving role play to me, and what I can do to pay them back. And there's a lot. There's a lot of little things that I've learned over time, such as a big thing that I do when I'm role playing is I just shut the fuck up, which is hard for that Silas fella I hear. He never shuts the fuck up. I tell you what.
We got hours and hours of evidence on that one.
But that's when you just go quiet. Let the other person talk and say what they need to say, and you start learning when the opportunity is for you to say something. And that's a real powerful thing. But no, if you want to get started, I'd say the three things are find your setting, find your server, and then find your character, which is, that's a whole other fucking process.
I'm curious about when you're talking about kind of the give and the take, and you referred to it as a scene. Because you and I would assume most of the other people, or Silas and most of the other people on the server are streaming, on Twitch or YouTube, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you kind of have a goal in mind? You're like, I'm creating the scene of whatever events I want to transpire, or these other people want?
It depends. So there's a couple different things. So when I talk about a scene, usually that means like an interaction. If I'm sitting around in a bar and I'm talking to, somebody, and they lean in real close and they go, Eddie, I got a couple things to tell you. And then we start having I say, all right, well, let's go out back. We're going to have a talk. And we go out back and we have a private conversation. That whole conversation, that's a scene in and of itself. That's, it's just an interaction. It's a pace to a story that builds up over time, right? And in terms of goals, I mean, really, you're just trying to find the end of a story. That's what real good role play is all about. If you want to get real deep into it, because there's other servers that's all you'll see, like light role play, which is fun. That's light role play is good to have, where you're playing a game, but you're kind of doing something here and there. You're not getting too serious, and you're it's just purely about having fun. But on the deeper level, when I talk about my son passing away, Silas doesn't have any kids at all. This was a person that I bonded with through role play, that we had multiple scenes together, and over time the relationship developed to a familial thing, and that there was just a way that it worked out very naturally to where I ended up adopting this fella as my son. he took my name and, you know, he was Rose Windward, and that was that. And, you know, eventually his characters, the story that he told, or the person that was playing the story decided to tell the story in such a way that led to the passing of my son, right? And it can, you know, the scenes, again, are all organic. You're only ever really telling folk, hey, I'm going to be around at this, like your availability. But what happens when you meet up, however you happen to be able to meet up, you know, that's up to the scene. You don't know how it's going to be. I've had scenes that I go into, you know, when to continue on with my son passing out, when that scene happened of him being, the way that it happened is he went up with my other son, and he ended up, you know, just passing peacefully in the snow, but he got brought back down. And the moment he was laid at my feet, I broke down. And it wasn't me breaking down, it was Silas breaking down. It's such an emotionally impactful thing. And you don't think about that when you first get into it. But you also have to kind of tell yourself and ask yourself, well, what do you want out of this? And sometimes you won't know until you find it. You might dive a little deep. That was one of those things I dove a bit too deep and thought, God damn, I didn't think it'd make me this fucking emotional. I'm supposed to be a hard ass. And, but eventually, like I said, you figure out what you like to do. My favorite time in role play has been doing just kind of casual, what they call Civ RP, which is where you're just a person. You're not, you know, that you have folks that are law or criminals, or they're doing whatever they're doing. You know, working for the state as a doctor, or working for the transit authority, or whatever they might be doing. But I was just a regular old fellow. When I was working as an information broker, I was there in Saint Denis, the big city that's there in the crossing. And I took a lot of time to just sit in a bar with some good friends and drink and shoot the shit with folk. And that was just fun. That's what I liked doing for a long time. And when that era came to an end, when the stories drove people in different directions, well, that was that. And you appreciate the time that you have and the stories that were told, and, you know, the scenes happen as they happen, and you take what you can get. Hope that you'll sort of gravitate towards the folks that you like getting role played, or the folks that you like to role play with. I'm very fortunate. Some of the people that ended up playing parts in my life are very talented and great storytellers. So I'm very appreciative of them.
Okay, so I'm kind of curious, I guess this is a two-part question. What drew you or made you initially want to begin doing this role play? And the follow-up bit to that is to follow up on what you just said. What did you think you were looking for when you first started?
Those good questions. I initially, when I first started, or when I first got into it, I guess I need to go back a little ways. A long time ago, when I was much younger than when I started role playing or when Silas started role playing on Wild RP, he played a little game called Dragon Ball Rebirth, and it was a text-based, like 2D sprite Dragon Ball game, and it was all role play. You had your in the current role play, it's in the Wild RP role play, it's all, you know, you're playing through the medium is a game, as they keep telling me. I don't know, it's my life. I don't know how the fuck it works. The medium is a video game, but you talk. You know, we're speaking to each other. A lot of the actions, though, you know, if you have to reach out and pat someone on the back, you're doing what's called a slash me. So you do slash me and then pat you on the back, and then you just use your imagination of how I'm patting you, right? Because that technology is limiting us, but we just recently got to be able to start hugging each other. That's pretty fantastic. I
love that for you.
It's pretty fantastic, I tell you. But he played that for a long time, and it was again, it was just text based, and that was fun. That was the first introduction to role play, and then moved on to D&D. We played a little bit of D&D. Dungeons and Dragons. We got a similar thing called Goblins and stuff. I don't know. Deacon played it. It's some weird shit. I watched him play it once. Fucking nerds is what they are. And
yeah,
play a little Dungeons and Dragons, and then eventually moved on to playing a shitload of Red Dead Online. I don't know why, but Silas played just a bunch of Red Dead Online, and this thought came across his mind. Well, what if they have? I've seen all these videos of folks playing GTA role playing. I think they're real fun. It looks like a lot of fun. What if they have a Red Dead Redemption version of that? So push comes to shove, he went looking and found some streamers, and them streamers were playing on this server called Wild RP. And Wild RP, it was a whitelisted server. Now, what he didn't know at the time is that it's kind of hard to get into the server. You got to have some chops. And he got in at just the right time before it got way harder to get into the server, But he had to fill out an application. You had to write all this bullshit about what would you do in these situations if somebody's or if somebody's robbing you and you're in the general store working. What are you going to do? Are you gonna try and fight them, or you just answer these fucking hypothetical questions? I hate hypothetical questions. And
I'm glad to hear that.
and so yeah, well, again, one thing led to another. He ended up somehow getting in, and what do you know? That's the end of that. He made me. I was supposed to be a fucking throwaway character. That son of a bitch. It was because they don't teach you how to play the fucking game. They have all these extra mechanics and shit. They don't teach you shit, and it ended up fucking really loving that. And there you go. I've completely forgotten the second half of that question. What was that?
When you first started, what did you think you were going to be doing?
Right.
Were you looking to just sit in the bar and bullshit?
Well, that's the thing is, I didn't go into it with any expectations. That's kind of the funny thing. I went into it just wanting to try it. And it was so funny because I thought early on it was going to be like I'd do this on the weekends, or I'd do it, once a week or something. Every Saturday I'd just like to role play a little bit. No, I was hooked. Once I got introduced to the real, nitty gritty, because when I first started, it was just like, I'm sweeping stuff and hanging around watching other people do stuff. But once I got introduced to some folk, hot damn. And it was interesting too, because I ended up meeting some of the people that I had watched streams of. So some of the people that I had been inspired by, I ended up meeting. And what do you know? And the next thing you know, I'm interacting with them regularly. And the next thing you know, I'm talking with them. And next thing you know, we're friends. How about that? One of my closest friends that I met through role play, I initially saw them as a streamer. That was odd. What do you know? So yeah, I didn't go. I didn't go into it with any expectations. It's just I went in and hoped for the best, and it turned into then being addicted to good storytelling.
That's really cool. So outside of the Dragon Ball text game, did you ever do any other GTAs or?
I did a little bit of GTA RP, but I learned very quickly I'm not a fan. I learned very quickly and I don't know if I just got too spoiled, because there's definitely it's a big difference in how the stories are told in these two environments. When you add in modern technology, they got, phones and the interwebs and all this other bullshit that just complicates everything. You can know where somebody is at the drop of a dime. With Red Dead, you're riding around hoping to find folk. You don't know who you're going to run into. You don't know. You can send some telegrams or maybe leave a note on a tree or something. I don't know. But you're not calling anybody up using fucking space age technology or nothing. You're just hoping for the best. And there's also a much different mentality. There's streamers, Red Dead streamers and GTA streamers are very different. You're watching two different shows, really. And that's a whole dichotomy I could get real deep into. I don't think I'm gonna though, because it just makes me upset.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I was curious about the creation of Addie Windward, and if there was any kind of influences from like specific characters, shows, movies,
Arthur
games.
Morgan.
Oh yeah,
I think. Well, yeah, a little, not too much. I had played through the campaign and of the story. Great story, by the way. Oh, if you've never played Red Dead Redemption 2, I highly recommend it.
I should go back and finish that someday, but go on.
It's so fucking good. Not that me, Addie Windward, would know anything about that. I hear it's really good though. No, I a little bit from Arthur Morgan. He, I think more so his sort of older grit that he had. I definitely took some inspiration from. But no, I've drawn inspiration from a lot of things. And the thing about Addie's initial creation is that it wasn't. Again, it started real blank slate, right? I had very small pieces, and I had to put the rest together as I, had my adventures. It started very simple. I was, old fella that just came to the crossing. I had done some bad things in the past, and that was that. We'll figure it out from there. And slowly but surely, I figured out. Well, so for some reason I'd forgotten I had a son, but I remembered, and I'd remembered.
Happens to the best of us.
I remembered. I'm from Tumbleweed. Shit, I got to remember that. And you piece things together. In actuality, no, I start, at least when I make my characters, you start pretty blank. You have a very baseline, this is who this is and this is what they're going to do. And the rest is, we'll figure it out. And Addie was supposed to be a throwaway character. He's supposed to be, because again, they don't tell you. And I was like, is there any way I could figure out how to play this fucking game? Because it's a lot harder than it looks. There's a lot more to it. And they said, no, you just got to get in there, figure it out. And so I got in there and figured it out with Addie. The unfortunate part is that not only did the folks around me fall in love with the character, Silas fell in love with the character as well. And so what are you going to do? And now you got to play him out. And 4.5 years later, here you are. So
you just stuck existing.
Yeah. And the story is, I have a whole backstory to the Windward name, and there's, different things with my brother and my family members and folks that have, the story started so simple as just just an old fella with a, bit of a tough past. And now he's a older, wiser father figure of a lot of folk that is looked to as sort of a piece of wisdom. When you need a little advice, you come see old Addie Windward, and there you go. So, but no, there you go.
So is it, my only experience with role play is through Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm sure everybody does it differently, obviously. But the way
Absolutely.
I've always played it is, you have not a novel of a backstory, but you have a little blurb of a backstory, a little bit of where you came from and why you're here, and then you develop the story from there.
Absolutely.
So was it similar? There was at least a little bit of background.
There was a little bit. Again, it was. I knew, if I'm speaking as Silas right now, just still. Hey, how are you? My voice is stuck like this. Help me. It starts with when I created the character. They give you 6 slots. You get up to 6 characters if you want to make 6, because you can play different characters, which I did not for a long time. But I had this idea in my head of two characters. I was the character that I wanted to play as the beginning character, who is this character named Addie Windward, Atlas Windward. I really liked the name. I was stuck on the name Atlas, but I didn't want anybody to call him Atlas because I thought that was lame. And so I thought, oh, Addie. Somehow I found Addie, and it was always funny because people, I'd say, oh, howdy there, I'm Addie Windward. They go, oh, is that A-D-D-Y? Or no, A-T-T-Y. It's just I have a thick accent, so you can't understand me. And so, no, I had wrote that he was a debt collector. That was the job. But he was the sort of debt collector that he ain't going to collect a debt repeatedly. He's the last fellow that gets set to collect the debt that's getting collected, regardless one way or the other. Yeah, the money's getting got. All right. And he worked for a fellow by the name of Bartholomew Fieldings, and Fieldings was the character that I was going to play. He was sort of a Southern, or he's supposed to be based like Louisiana type of area. And he was just supposed to be a real vile piece of shit. I thought I've always had this, sort of infatuation with like anti-heroes and villains. And I really thought about, one of the streams that I had watched very early on was a fella who was playing this real big bad villain. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. I like that he can do that. I found out later he was staff and he got to abuse his power a little bit. As a whole other can of worms. We're not going to talk about that. But he that was the thing. He got to build this reputation, and I thought that would be really interesting to start as kind of a lackey and then build yourself up to be, but ended up being more of an anti-hero kind of character with Addie Windward as I progressed through that. But no, I started as he was going to be a character that I played for about a month and a half, and then killed somehow, which I was given the very perfect opportunity when I got fucking kidnapped in the first month. And
by the cannibals?
They were the bloodletters. I got kidnapped by the cannibals later.
Oh, right. Forgive me for mixing up those two events.
And no, I hadn't really, in terms of the deep lore, I hadn't come up with anything too serious. But as I continued to play, I thought, well, I might want to flesh this character out a little bit more, because people are asking me these fucking questions, where are you from and what are you doing and why are you in the crowd? All this shit I didn't have answers to. I just had to make it up as I went along, and then keeping track of it and making it one congruent story is kind of the fun part. So that's how I did it. And that's how I do, if I do other characters, I'll do a real baseline, usually where they're from. I come up with a voice, which is always funny because when I tell people how I do the voices, I literally just walk around my house real late at night and talk to myself. I just have full-on conversation. So you can imagine me walking around my house talking like this for fucking hours at a time. And yeah, that's how I do it. But you're right. Everyone's different. I've had characters that I've written, like for D&D or one thing or another, where I've big backstories, whole, short novels, but it really is up to the player. Because I've seen people do it both ways and have great success with it, where you have a very deep, lore-rich backstory, or you have a backstory that's, you discover as you go along. It's really up to how you want to pursue it, So there you go.
Yeah, I think that, at least in my D&D experience and from what I've seen in your role-playing and limited exposure to other role-playing, it seems like it'd be easier in my mind, or at least it'd be easier to me if I was doing it, to have that moldable backstory that's not too deep. So then if people ask questions, or if you just want to add some flair to it, basically at any given moment, you can shape it in the way you want. That's cool.
You're right.
Cool.
Now, it makes a big difference to be able to say, because, if somebody asks where you're from, then you can say, oh, I'm from, Colorado, or I'm from, Virginia, or I'm from wherever. And then all of a sudden you then get to build off of that. The one thing you don't want to do is say, oh, I'm from, Connecticut. You don't know shit about Connecticut. That's kind of, because then you have assholes who'll be like, oh, well, tell me about Connecticut. And you're like, oh, shit, well, So I usually will do a little bit of research if it's someplace I'm unfamiliar with, but usually I'll say I'm from, wherever I'm from. And it's easier to say you're from Tumbleweed because everyone fucking knows where that is if you're playing the goddamn same game. So there you
go. I wanted to ask you, kind of in the vein of streaming and role playing at the same time. Is it hard, or do you put any thought into kind of balancing? Are you doing this for a show, or are you legitimately just playing the game and having a good old time, and whatever audience is there is there?
For me, it's the latter. Now, that the unfortunate part of playing on a server like this is that you get big names that show up and they're in it for a mix of both. They have an audience to entertain, but they're also there for the story. And I ran into a few of those folks, and some of them were easier to deal with than others. And I never had a big, I got some big raids. That's the thing about that community. It's very tight knit. So and I was a late night role player. I'd be up at what we used to call gremlin hours, right? Gremlin, goblin, it switches back, but usually I call them gremlin hours. And folks used to just, pour viewers into my stream because they're like, oh, it's like 3-4 in the morning, I'm going to bed. And so I'd have the first time it happened and I had over 100 viewers, I thought, oh shit, I gotta be on my A game. And then, after that it was whatever. You get used to seeing the larger numbers. But if I would be streaming during like prime time and I'd have about 10, 15 people, whoever's there is there. I'm doing my thing. For me, it was always more about the fun of it. It was never more, I definitely tried to do, when I first started streaming, I wanted to have fun with it. It was something to do because I started during COVID. And it was something to do. It was fun to do. Pass the time, made things more enjoyable. At a certain point, I got to make a little money from it, so all the better. And I was doing it pretty much full time there for a while, for several years almost. And I got to a point where it was just too draining, because you go from it just being a fun thing to then it being like, it feels like a job a little bit. You want to be there and you want to present yourself, and you got to get to that mentality. And the thing that they don't tell you about doing more serious role play is it can be very emotionally draining. You're there, you feel the impact of a lot of these stories. When you have to bury somebody and when a character goes away, it's not the same as, having to bury a family member, but there is a loss that's there because it's somebody that you got to interact with and talk to, and you think, shit, I never get to talk to this character again. I never get to see them again. And that's a very hard thing to deal with. You can get very emotionally attached to these things. But, again, for me, it was more for fun. I enjoyed watching the numbers go up. Don't get me wrong. There's definitely that serotonin hitting my brain every single time. But it was never about, I'm going to do this as a job. At one point, maybe it felt that way. But no, I think once I realized I was taking it a bit too seriously, I sort of hit the brakes, and I did a lot more role play off stream than I did on as I got further into it, because it was just more fun to just be there and focus on the role play. When you're sitting here looking back and forth to your chat or whatever, it distracts you from the story you're trying to tell sometimes.
I can imagine.
And people adapt to that, because you'll have folks that do, no chat interaction, or, chat can choose how the character interact, just however they want to do it. One thing I will say, one big downside to streaming is being stream sniped, and having folks just show up in places. I made friends with a larger streamer. He really liked my character and I really liked his, and we melded really well together and told some really interesting stories. And, but he had a bigger following. He had a way bigger following than I did. And people would just fucking show up where we were. We'd be off having a private conversation. There was one time we was in a mine, and some fella just showed up and said, "Oh, I recognized your horse outside." And he was like, "What the fuck?" There's 10 other folk that got that fucking horse. And so it was pretty obvious And so things like that were always kind of annoying. I actually, funnily enough, I had a fella that stream sniped me, and I thought that's very odd because I just felt like a nobody for a long time. And in comparison to some of these bigger folks, I was. But no, you know, if you have a really cool story going on, then people want part of it. And if they want part of it, they're going to find out how to find you. So it was always something. But, you know, for me, it was still fun. I still had a lot of fun doing it.
Wanted to interject a little story. I remember when you were doing this and you were streaming what seemed like damn near full-time hours on Addy Windward, and then I would catch you and we'd play a little Rocket League or whatever we were playing at the time, Overwatch, I don't know. You'd be talking as Silas all normal and just slip into Addy and slip back into Silas, just back. Man, that was some funny stuff.
I have a story about that. My girlfriend and I, so the first year that we dated is when I had just started role playing. It was like right at the same time. And yeah, I was pulling long hours. And there was one weekend that I came over, and I don't know what I had been up for like, 16, 18 hours, and I drove over to my girlfriend's house, and I laid down, and it was kind of later at night, and I was sort of in and out, and she remembers it, but I don't. But apparently I woke up sometime in the middle of the night when she came to check on me. I said, "Will you go give me a glass of water?" And I said it like Addy. You go over and give me a glass of water, babe. And Jesus Christ. I was like, I'm in it right now. It's bad when you wake up out of it and you just start talking. But no, it's definitely something I can do a little. I could slip into it a bit too easily now. Something about that. I don't know if that's normal.
All right, this is going to be the final question, and then we've got just a little bit more for the listeners there.
All right.
I wanted to ask, and kind of the floor is yours, do you have a particular story, a favorite moment, interaction?
Oh, yeah. I tell you what, I have a number of them. I'll give you two. The first one is I mentioned earlier about civ roleplay, civilian roleplay. I had a fella, another character by the name of Pearly, a really amazing. He's a guy that don't stream at all. I mean, he's extremely talented. I mean, you'd never know. You'd think he was like a, AI made NPC that just is there all the time. I mean, he's fantastic, incredibly talented fella. And he used to run a bar, and it was like the most popular bar. If you were a criminal, if you were a lawman, you were going to this fucking bar. And it was called the Blue Pearl. And I mean, oh man, that thing, I think it's called the Blue Pearl. I might be wrong with that. I'm pretty sure it's called Blue Pearl. But that bar, it was in San Diego's little shit. And it's funny because you had the Bastille, which was this nice, swanky bar. All these folks tried to get people. No one ever went there. You're going down to the Pearl. Because that's where Pearly's at. And that's where all they used to have fights right there. It's a little tiny bar, right? And you used to have fist fights right in there, and people would take bets, and you'd stand behind the bar as to not get punched in the face. And it was just good times. And I remember there was one particular time when there was something going on in the city, and folks are getting shot up, or who the fuck knows what happens. But I'm walking with Pearly and a few other of my good friends, and I really just, I felt that moment, right? And I sort of looked at everyone. I said, this is one of those things that this ain't going to last, and I said that out loud. I vocalized that this ain't going to last. This is real nice. And it ain't going to last. So I'm going to enjoy it while I can. And that true to form, it didn't. It was, it lasted for a good long while, but then again, the stories sort of went their own ways. And I look back at that as being a real defining moment of being like, the moment I realized it, I knew it was fleeting. It was very fleeting. Another time is, when I first started role playing, again, I mentioned there was a streamer that I had watched, and it was the streamer. It was the the person that played, who would later be my son, Rabbit, I had and it was by pure circumstance. This is why I love role play like this, right? I was working in this casino behind the bar, and I had a woman come into the bar, and she's chatting me up, and she said, "Hey, I'm curious if you know this person." I said, "No, but I know someone who might." And they said, "Oh, well, I know that person too. Do you think you could talk to them, get them to have a chat with me?" And the person they wanted me to talk to was Rabbit. And I hadn't mentioned, I knew of the person through V, and I knew of Rabbit through V as well, but I didn't know Rabbit. Right. And so just out of pure dumb luck that this lady comes waltzing into the bar, and I'm the only one there. There's no one. Back in the day, it used to be that you could only have 32 people on the server. So if you was on the main server, there was probably 32 fucking people there. But if you was on the other server, well, there's probably only about 10, and you was all going to be spread out probably. But just, again, pure circumstance. And so I organized a meeting between me and Rabbit to then speak on this person's behalf. And I remember it was a real tense moment because I was like, oh shit, I'm going to get fucking stabbed, you know? But it was this person, it was almost a little intimidating because I was like, I know who you are, but I'm not supposed to know who you are. Because I'd watched their streams. I was a little bit of a fan. And it was just interesting because then I got to talk to him and be like, oh, this is just a person. And what do you know? And then the story progressed where I got to just run into this person more and more. And next thing you know, we're kin. And that's just odd how that worked out. And not only that, but then outside of the game, they became one of my very close friends. So it's, you know, it just happened like that. But those probably two of the top moments. There's plenty of stories and moments and shit. I mean, I've cried and laughed harder than I could imagine and just had a grand old time. But those are ones that stick out, I'd say.
That's really cool. I was kind of expecting maybe a comedic bank robbery or someone getting kicked by a horse or something goofy.
I mean, I have, if you want bank robberies, I have a couple of funny ones. But
no, actually, I think that was almost more poetic because it speaks to the organic story building.
You sure you don't want to hear a time about a buddy of mine throwing a fucking deer at a person just to see what would happen? You don't want to hear a story like that? You don't want to hear.
Now I do. Come on.
No, it was more funny because of what he said, because he said, so I guess another thing I need to explain is you got people like me who are actual walking, talking folk, but then you have the other folk that are just around.
The others.
We call them locals. That's what you call them. And you treat locals just like real people because they are. They just don't talk to you for some reason.
Some reason.
They're assholes. I don't know. And so a fella that I knew, I said, it was the middle of winter. And I go, are you not going to sell that deer? He goes, no, I just threw it at a local, see what would happen. And I damn near lost my mind. I about fell out of my seat. It was just so odd. At another time, it was after a real big shootout. I wasn't involved in it, but I was there in the aftermath because some friends of mine had gotten shot. And I'm sitting there having a conversation with one of the folks that had just been patched up. And this fellow walks up with a deer over his shoulder. He goes, is this anybody's deer? We go, no, not at all. Get the fuck out of here. And then he trounces into the medical office and asks the same question. We just hear a buddy of mine go, get the fuck out of here. He really wanted to know whose deer that was.
Do you know if he ever got to the bottom of that mystery?
I think he ended up claiming it as his own. I don't know if he found the original owner, but he took that deer, which was fine by us. Other than that, no, any bank robbery I was involved in, I got held hostage a couple times, but I was such a friend with every criminal that they just would give me a cigarette and send me on my way after. And then the funny thing is I'd get interviewed by the law and they'd go, so are you hurt or anything? I go, No, not at all. Why would I be? I'm Addie Windward. I'd just sit there and shoot the shit with them, and then I'd be like, all right, I got to act like I'm scared. Sorry, boys. And then, there you go.
That's awesome. Everything you've described sounds really fun.
I tell you what.
Cannot lie.
I got one more story. This will be the last one I tell. This is a really good one. Telling those other stories led to this one. This could be the last story I tell. I made a lot of friends in the crossing, and there's a fella by the name of Clayton that I befriended, and he come around and he used to rob folk. Yeah, that's just what he did. He'd find folk and he'd do it by himself. He had a double barrel. He'd hold you up and take what he needed and get on out of there. So I knew this fella real well. And I was in Saint Denis one night, real late. And I walk up to the gun store because I needed some gun oil or some ammunition or something. And I'm sitting there and I see this horse out of the corner of my eye, and it speeds on down. And I see what looks like somebody hop up off that horse. And I'm going, oh, I've seen this sort of situation before, because that fella, I couldn't see his face because there was something covering it. And so I'd pull out my 6-shooter and I'll walk outside, and there's 2 barrels of a shotgun pointed right at me. And I go, howdy there. And I hear a muffled voice go, Addie, is that you? I was like, what the heck? And he pulls his mat, and it's my buddy Clayton. There you go. He goes, oh, shit, I was about to rob you, Addie. And I go, well, I'm glad you didn't. He got on his horse and rode off. There you go.
Just a casual night in Saint Denis.
Just, it's one of those things that just, you never know who you're going to run into. So there you go.
Man, that's awesome. You're selling me on this. You're making an RP sound pretty damn fun.
I will say, it's one of those things that you should go into it with no expectations. Go into it just, I'm gonna have some fun. A buddy of mine said it best. At the end of the day, it's a goofy pew pew cowboy game. That's what it is. You're just, and you can play whoever, you can be whoever you want. You want to be a tough as shit cowboy. I'll fight you if you talk shit to me. Sure. But if you want to just be a fellow roaming around, you can. It's up to you. Be whoever you want.
The world is yours.
That's right.
All right. So that's the end of my interview questions, if you will. Mm-hmm. But I do have here on Time Well Meant. You might not be familiar. I don't know. Are you a listener?
We get it in the crossing, surprisingly. I don't know how.
Really?
It's we got
it's probably Amazon Podcasts.
I don't know how. They broadcast it somehow, but yeah, we get it. I've heard at least I've heard like one episode, not for me.
Fair. That's a fair point. But here on Time Well Meant, at least here recently, we like to end kind of the little wind down bit of our episode. We like to pose a hypothetical question. Usually Silas and I will go back and forth, maybe make some jokes.
That's Silas guy, I swear.
Nah, he's all right. He's all right. You can't shit talk him too much. I like him. But I figured
I can shit talk him all I want. What do you mean?
I figured I could run one by you if you're okay with it.
Normally I'd say fuck off. But for you, you've been such a kind and gracious host, I'll allow it.
Oh, man, I really appreciate your time. So, you've actually surprised me with your knowledge.
It'll be well meant.
Damn. Pew, pew. That was good. Okay, now, you kind of surprised me with your knowledge of, like, modern technology. I wasn't expecting you to be so up to speed on that stuff. So, I'm curious, are you familiar with outer space?
What do you mean by that?
You look up, you see the sky, right? You see the stars at night.
Well, yeah, I'm not dumb. I've seen stars before.
So, that's like outer space. Those stars are worlds and planets out
Is
there.
that what the fuck they're calling it these days? I don't know. I
You are
just call
making
them
this
stars. I didn't realize it was more than that.
You're making this kind of hard on me. I should have picked a different question in hindsight, but that's okay.
I'm fucking
okay.
with you. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I've seen the stars.
No, 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 no.
I've been on the goggle. I've been on the goggle for about 10 minutes.
Okay, well, if
I've been goggling.
You should know about outer space, right? Other planets, other worlds.
I tell you what,
okay.
I know just enough to answer your question.
Perfect. That's exactly what I needed here. How do you think life would change in the crossing if aliens suddenly landed?
You ever see that? We have motion pictures here in the crossing. They're nothing like what y'all have. There's one I saw recently that y'all ever seen Cowboys versus Aliens? I'd be a lot like that. So, no, I don't know. It depends on. Okay, let me ask you a counter question. Are these aliens good aliens? Or are they bad aliens? Are they here to shoot us up or not? What are they doing? What are these kind of aliens doing?
Why don't you give me an answer for both?
Okay, all right. I like that. That's like what they call that Uno. That's that game y'all played. That's them Uno reverse cards.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So I'd say if they were good aliens, me personally, I'd probably want to learn a bit about them. But I can't speak for everybody else. I feel like a lot of them would end up getting robbed if they come with good intentions and shit, and you got something shiny and looks valuable. You're probably gonna get it stolen. Honestly,
you get a double barrel shotgun in your face.
The funny thing about it is you sort of learn different things. If you got a real nice gun that you like, you don't ride with it unless you're with a group of folk that are willing to help fight, keep that gun, right? If you're riding around, by yourself with a bolt action rifle, you're asking for trouble, right? Unless you're a ranger, you're just asking for trouble. But no, I've definitely seen plenty of folk that would probably treat aliens with the same sort of kindness that they treat anybody else on the crossing. If they was bad, I hope we'd be able to take. There's a lot of fighting folk in the crossing. There's a lot of fighting folk. People love to fight, whether it's with their fists or with guns or knives or whatever it might be. I would like to think we might stand a chance. I know the Army got one of them Maxim guns. They got that got the rotating thing on it and shoots a bunch of bullets. I don't know how that shit works. That newfangled technology. But I'd like to think we might stand a bit of a chance. I don't know. We might get our asses kicked. I wouldn't be surprised. But if they're good, then I would treat them well. I would hope to treat them well. If they're bad, well, they'll find out what bad really is. I don't know.
Oh, that's tough words coming from Mr. Windward.
Listen, I'm old. I still got it, though.
You still got some fight left in you?
A little. Just enough. Just enough
to fend off an alien invasion of the planet. That's what we like to hear.
That's right.
What we like to hear. All right. Well, we are actually nearing the end.
Hold on now. What are you doing if good aliens or bad aliens are showing up? I can't let you just go and have me answer. I need to know what your answer is now. Now understand, you got to answer it in the context of you're a cowboy. What are you doing in that situation?
Okay. Well, if they're good, I'm going to assess their build, their physicality, and hopefully... No. I mean, if they're good, we gotta work with them. We gotta live with them and see what technology they have. I mean, if they flew through space and got here, they have better technology. So we need to keep dumb old people away from them who are gonna be stupid and piss them off. We gotta be friendly. We come and piece it, or you come and piece it. So we're chill. We're cool. But if they're hot, No, but if they're bad and they come down and they just start, I assume they just start blasting. I mean, you're not going to land and talk. You're just going to start blasting, Danny DeVito style.
They started blasting.
Yeah. And in that case, I don't think that we actually have the technology to fight them. Maybe a particularly stupid world leader would pose like, just nuke it, and then shoot a nuke straight up into the spaceship, which blows up downward and radiates all of America. That sounds like kind of a likely outcome in my mind. But ultimately, like, the truthful answer would just be do whatever I could to keep my family and friends safe. I don't think my little Texan arsenal that's in my house is gonna help me too much, but just like the wise words that Addie just said, I got a little fight in me, just enough.
Just enough. There you go. That's a good answer. I like that. Good on you.
But ultimately, yeah, I would fuck them. Yeah.
As any red-blooded American would.
That's right. All right. We are nearing the end of our time here now. So Addie has one more special gift he wants to give us all.
That's right.
He's going to do a monologue that I have chosen for him to do. And this is an ode to all my Sunny fans out there.
That's right. All right. I'm doing this cold, so if I trip over my words a little bit, there's a horse that just rode by and his radio is really loud. It scared me. All right, hold on just a second. I'm gonna get real. When I do any sort of reading, I gotta focus up a little bit and get in the moment. Right now, I want you to know, as a cowboy, as a 1900s cowboy, I've never seen whatever the fuck this is from, so I have to interpret it on my own accord. I'm gonna read it as I would normally.
Good.
All right. That right there is the mail. Now, let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please, Mac? I've been dying to talk about the mail with you all day, okay? Pepe Sylvia, his name keeps coming up over and over and over again. Every day, Pepe's mail's getting sent back to me. Pepe Sylvia. I look in the mail, this whole box is Pepe Sylvia. So I say to myself, I gotta find this guy. I gotta go up to his office. I gotta put his mail in his goddamn hands. Otherwise, he's never gonna get it. And it's gonna keep coming back down here. So I go up to Pepe's office. And what do I find out, Mac? What do I find out? There is no Pepe Sylvia. The man does not exist, okay? So I decided, oh, shit, buddy, I gotta dig a little deeper. There's no Pepe Sylvia. You gotta be kidding me. I got boxes full of Pepe. All right? So I start marching my way down to Carol in HR, and I knock on her door. I say, Carol, I gotta talk to you about Pepe. And when I open the door, what do I find? There's not a single goddamn desk in that office. There is no Carol in HR, Mac. Half the employees in this building have been made up. This office is a goddamn ghost town.
That was absolutely beautiful. That was beautiful. That made my night. I'm going to clip that and play it anytime I'm sad.
I'm glad I could bring a little light to your life there, friend.
Man, it's been so great having you here today, Addy. Maybe we'll have to bring you back. I'm hoping the fans enjoy this episode. I know I sure did. Any final words from you?
I appreciate you having me on your podcast, Time Well Lent, or whatever the fuck it was called. It was nice. I like this whole, whatever this new age shit y'all kids are doing. I like this. This is nice. You sit around and talk. I didn't realize you could just do this.
It's a pretty sweet gig.
I was doing it out of necessity. I didn't know you could do it for fun. No, everyone be good. I appreciate y'all having me on. And thank you, Kirby, for being such a gracious host.
No problem. I will let Silas know that you had a good time.
Fuck that guy.
Well, before we get out of here, folks, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Got the YouTubes, Instagrams, all the good things. I've been putting our hypothetical question in the form of a poll. If you're listening on Spotify, you can listen and comment there. Comment on the YouTube. And as much as I would love to sit here and listen to Addy's wild stories of cannibals, bloodletters, bank robberies, dead children, whatever else, I think that was time well meant.
I have been dialed in to this drama.
Communication is alpha.